I found out about Lauren's affair on a Wednesday afternoon, sometime between a conference call and a lukewarm cup of coffee. That detail still sticks with me, the ordinary timing of it. I was at my desk, the soft hum of the air conditioner and the faint smell of printer ink filling the room. She'd left her iPad at home that morning, something she never did, and it kept buzzing every few minutes. I ignored it at first, thinking it was one of her endless group chats, until curiosity nudged me toward the edge. When I opened the screen, I wasn't looking for anything. That's what I told myself. But there it was, a text thread with someone saved simply as M. The messages weren't explicit, at least not at first. Just familiar. Too familiar. "I miss your coffee," he'd written. "Can't stop thinking about your laugh." And then one from her, timestamped 1:12 a.m. "Last night was too good. You make me feel like myself again." I remember just staring at those words, like they were written in a language I almost understood, but not quite. I didn't throw the iPad or call her. I didn't do anything. Instead, I set it back down on the counter, screen face down, and finished my coffee. The rest of the day played out like a movie where I already knew the ending. Meetings, small talk, a late lunch I didn't taste. My coworkers probably thought I was distracted, maybe stressed about deadlines. I was, in a way, but the deadline was my marriage. Lauren came home around 6, her hair slightly damp, the faint scent of some floral shampoo trailing behind her. She smiled when she saw me, a practice gesture I suddenly recognized as performance. "You're home early," she said, setting her bag down. I nodded, my voice calm, casual. "Yeah, thought I'd cook tonight." That's how it started, my quiet revenge that I didn't confront her. Not that night, not the next day. Instead, I began to observe. You can learn a lot about someone when they think you're not looking. The way she lingered on her phone at night, the sudden interest in jogging, the new perfume she claimed she'd had for ages. I wasn't angry, not exactly. It was more like a numb curiosity. How long had she been living this double life right under my nose? I started taking small notes, mental ones mostly. Times, excuses, changes in tone. I became a quiet archivist of my own betrayal. One night, while she was in the shower, I checked her calendar. A work trip coming up, 2 nights in Chicago for client meetings. I smiled at that. The same weekend I was supposedly driving to my brother's place in Portland. Perfect symmetry. I booked a flight under my middle name, just in case. Chicago, same hotel she'd reserved. Room 3 floors below hers. The hotel was one of those sleek, modern ones, glass and chrome everywhere. The kind of place where everything feels both anonymous and expensive. I checked in late, wearing a baseball cap and keeping my head down. When I reached my room, I opened the curtains and stared out at the city. The lights stretched endlessly, blinking like stars that had lost their meaning. Around 9 p.m., I saw her. Lauren, stepping out of a cab in that long gray coat I'd bought her for Christmas. Beside her, a man, tall, clean-cut, the type who probably wore cologne with the word intense in it. They were laughing. He placed a hand on her back as they walked inside, and I felt something twist inside me. Not rage, not heartbreak, something quieter and deeper, like the earth shifting beneath a foundation. I didn't follow them. Not yet. I waited, watching, timing. At 10:30, I went downstairs. Walked past the lobby bar, pretending to check my phone. They were there, sitting close, 2 drinks half empty between them. Her hand brushed his knee when she laughed. That detail, that casual intimacy, felt like a blade pressed gently against my throat. I walked past, unnoticed, and stepped into the night air. The city buzzed around me, indifferent and alive. I lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years, and stood there, letting the smoke fill the quiet spaces where anger should have been. That's when the idea came that I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to live with the knowledge that she'd destroyed herself. So, I began the next phase, the quiet game. When she came home 2 days later, I acted like nothing had happened. Asked about her meetings, nodded at the right times. She seemed almost relieved, like she'd gotten away with something. That relief was my leverage. Over the next few weeks, I became the perfect husband. Flowers on Fridays, breakfast on Sundays, thoughtful texts during her workday. I knew it disoriented her. She started to study me the way I had studied her. "You've been different lately," she said one night, half smiling, half wary. "Different good or different bad?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just different." That was enough that I started planting seeds. Not lies, exactly, just truths misplaced. Her phone charger would disappear, only to reappear in my car. A receipt for dinner for two tucked in her coat pocket. A faint trace of perfume on my shirts. Nothing obvious, just small fractures in her certainty. Then, one evening, I left my phone unlocked on the counter. An open message thread with a name she didn't recognize. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about you. Her silence when she found it was the kind of silence you could drown in. For weeks after that, she moved like a ghost through the house. She tried to keep up appearances, asking about my day, suggesting date nights, but her eyes gave her away. I could see the storm behind them, the gnawing confusion, the paranoia that maybe she wasn't the one in control anymore. And I played my part perfectly. Calm, affectionate, just distant enough. One night, she broke. It was late, maybe past midnight. She stood at the foot of our bed, tears streaking down her face, the kind of tears that come from guilt rather than loss. "Are you seeing someone?" she asked. Her voice trembled that I looked at her for a long moment, then shook my head slowly. "No. Why would you think that?" She stared at me, searching for some trace of truth. But the thing about the quiet game is that silence becomes its own kind of weapon. She didn't answer. She just sat down, her body folding in on itself, and whispered, "I don't know what's happening to us." I almost felt sorry for her. Almost out a few weeks later, I told her I thought we should take a break. She nodded too quickly, pretending to agree. But I saw the fear behind her eyes, the fear of losing control, of watching everything she'd built unravel. That I moved out the next day, into a small apartment downtown. Sparse furniture, bare walls. Freedom and minimalism. She texted me at first, then called, then stopped altogether. Months passed. The divorce papers came quietly, just like everything else. I signed them without hesitation. The last time I saw her was at the courthouse. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence, as if the confidence she once carried had evaporated. When she walked past me, she paused, like she wanted to say something, but didn't. I didn't either. It's been almost a year now. Sometimes I still think about that night in Chicago, the way she laughed with him, carefree, untethered. I wonder if she ever thinks about me, about the way I never raised my voice, never called her out, never gave her the closure she probably craves. That's the thing about quiet revenge. It doesn't announce itself. It just lingers, slow and patient, like the echo of a secret you can't unhear. I see her sometimes, in passing. At the grocery store once, at a cafe another time. She looks at me like she's not sure if she's allowed to smile. I usually just nod, polite, detached, because that's the truth of it. She broke something in me, yes. But I broke something in her that can't ever be fixed, and between the two of us, I'm not sure who ended up more haunted. The first story is over. Stay tuned. The next one will be even more interesting. Let's go? I noticed it first on a Friday, right after dinner. The phone buzzed 3 times in quick succession on the counter as we were cleaning up the dishes. Lauren had always been the one to leave her phone unattended, but tonight I was feeling restless. Something about the way she was acting. A little too distant, a little too preoccupied. I was drying a dish, but my eyes kept flicking toward the phone. Her lock screen was the same, a picture of us at that beach in Santa Monica last summer. She had her arm wrapped around me, her head resting on my shoulder, looking like she hadn't a care in the world. That image had always made me feel good, like we were untouchable, like we had everything figured out. But tonight, it looked different. I set the dish down and picked up the phone. She hadn't noticed. A couple of messages popped up on the screen. The name was what threw me off. Ben. I hadn't heard that name in years. Ben was Lauren's ex, the one she'd dated before me. They'd broken up long before we'd met, but I still remembered the way she talked about him. How broken she was when they split, how she claimed it was the one relationship she had that made her believe in love. That was before I'd come along and swept her off her feet. At least, that's what I thought. But now, after a few messages, I knew better. She wasn't just thinking about him. She was texting him, "Hey Ben, you still coming to town next month? I was just thinking about you, you know. Remember when we used to walk to that little cafe on the corner? I miss that." My chest tightened. I wasn't angry, not yet. But I couldn't ignore the feeling creeping up my spine, like something inside me had just shattered. That I didn't make a scene. I didn't slam the phone down and accuse her of anything. I just kept my eyes on the screen, trying to calm the sudden rise of heat in my chest. When she came back into the kitchen, I was already wiping down the counter, pretending I hadn't just seen everything. She barely looked at me, busying herself with some leftover salad in the fridge. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft, a little distracted. "Yeah, just thinking." Her eyes flicked to the phone, but I was careful. I didn't give her a reason to suspect. "I'll take care of that," she said, nodding toward the dishes I'd just finished. "You go relax. You've had a long week." I should have said something right then. I should have questioned her. But instead, I kissed her on the cheek, turned off the light, and went to bed. But as I lay there in the dark, I couldn't stop thinking about Ben. He was a ghost from her past, one I thought had stayed buried. And yet, here he was, making his presence felt in the silence of our house. The next few days felt off. Lauren was more distant than usual. She came home late from work, kept her phone face down when we ate dinner. I caught her texting again, but this time, I was prepared. I watched her like a hawk. Every time she glanced at her phone, every time she checked her messages in the bathroom. But that's when I realized something. This wasn't just a friendship. It was something more that I needed to confront her, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to be smarter than that. I began watching more carefully. The late nights, the soft smiles when she saw his name pop up on her screen. She wasn't being subtle about it, but I wasn't going to make her think I was suspicious. I was going to let her dig her own hole. One afternoon, I called in sick to work. I told her I'd stay home and get some things done around the house. When she left for the gym, I took her phone from the counter and unlocked it. It wasn't hard. She didn't use a password. The conversations were still there. The ones about the cafe, the ones about the good old days, the ones that always ended with an affectionate emoji or a teasing "miss you." I scrolled through them, my anger growing, my head spinning with thoughts of what I was going to do. But then I found something that stopped me cold. A picture. It wasn't a recent photo, but it was still there, tucked away in a thread from last summer. It was of the two of them at a concert, Lauren laughing, her hand in Ben's. It was from before we got married. And in that moment, I realized that what I had thought was a harmless reconnection wasn't harmless at all. She was still holding on to something with him. She was still holding on to him. I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there. Part of me wanted to throw it in her face. But then, another thought hit me. If I went in hard, if I accused her now, she would deny it. She would play innocent, act like I was overreacting. I couldn't risk that. I needed to hit her where it hurt, without her even knowing it. The following weekend, Lauren told me she was going out with some friends for drinks. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was happening. I spent the evening quietly planning my next move. I called Ben, the ghost, the one who thought he could waltz back into our lives, taking my place in some twisted way. He answered on the third ring. "Ben? It's Mark." There was a pause on the other end. I could practically hear him trying to place the name. "Mark? I'm sorry, I don't think we've met. Not in person, but you know my wife." There was another silence. Then, a tentative, "Look, man, I don't know what this is about, but don't lie to me. I know about the texts. I know about the pictures. I know everything. You think she hasn't told me about you?" I could hear him shift in his seat. Okay, let's just calm down here. Lauren and I, we're just friends now." I cut him off. "You're not just friends, and I'm not an idiot. You're not going to destroy my marriage, Ben." He didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was tight. "What do you want?" "I want you to stay the hell away from her," I said, my voice steady. "I want you to stop texting her. If I ever catch you trying to rekindle whatever it was you had, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll ruin everything you've built. And don't think I won't. I'm smarter than you think." He didn't say anything after that. I heard the click of the call ending. Lauren came home late that night, just like I knew she would. I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. She crawled in next to me, the faint smell of alcohol and perfume on her skin. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She knew I knew. When I woke up the next morning, she was already gone. I smiled to myself. I hadn't said a word to her yet, but I knew. I had the power now, and she didn't even realize it. She would. Eventually. The second story is over. Stay tuned. The next one will be even more interesting. Let's go? I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. It started small. The way she'd hesitate when she came home from work, how she'd smile just a little too quickly when I asked her about her day. She'd grown distant. Her phone was always face down, always buzzing with messages she'd rushed to silence. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. We've been married for 8 years. We had built something together, hadn't we? I was supposed to be able to trust her, But then came the night she stayed late at the office again. And the next night. And the night after that. I told myself it was just work. That was the story she fed me, after all. I told myself I was paranoid, overthinking things. That's what I wanted to believe. But deep down, something was wrong. I could feel it was my friend Lucas who first planted the seed. He didn't mean to. He just said it in passing while we were having drinks at a local bar. Man, you ever thought about checking up on her? I laughed, almost too loudly, and shook my head. What do you mean? You know, he said, looking around to make sure no one was eavesdropping. Just checking if she's where she says she is. If you're worried, there's ways to find out. I waved it off, but later that night, after the bar had closed and I was lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about what Lucas had said. I knew it was crazy, but the idea gnawed at me. I hired a private investigator the next day. I know. It sounds extreme, but the feeling in my gut was overwhelming. I couldn't trust her anymore. I needed to know, one way or another. The investigator, an old man named Tom, wasn't what I expected. He was quiet, methodical, and gave off the vibe of someone who had seen things. He didn't ask questions. He just did his job. For the next 2 weeks, he followed her. He didn't tell me everything. He sent brief updates, saying she was meeting people for lunch, sometimes going out for late drinks, and once, she spent an entire evening at a hotel downtown. A hotel I had never heard of. The reports made me sick. Not because I thought she was having an affair, but because I didn't know who she was anymore. My wife, the woman I had shared my life with, was slipping through my fingers in ways I couldn't control. I wanted to confront her, demand answers. But I had to wait. I needed to know the whole story. And then, the last report came in. It was 2 weeks ago when I saw it. The last set of photos from Tom. She was standing outside a dark building, holding hands with someone I didn't recognize. She kissed him on the cheek and smiled. A smile that felt too familiar, too intimate. But what really made my stomach churn was the address. It was an old neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, one I had never visited before. It was dark, run down, the kind of place you didn't walk into unless you had something to hide. I recognized the area. I had driven through it years ago, long before I ever met her. I remember seeing an old, boarded-up building there. I never thought anything of it, but now I was seeing it again. The photos didn't stop there. The next one was even worse. She was sitting inside the building, talking to a man I had never seen before. He had a scruffy beard, eyes that darted nervously. He handed her something, a small envelope, like he was passing a secret. The pictures were grainy, but I could tell enough. This wasn't just an affair. This was something deeper, darker. I couldn't do it. I couldn't just sit here anymore. I grabbed my jacket, slammed my phone on the table, and left. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even tell her. I couldn't. I was already halfway across town by the time I realized I was shaking. I didn't know what I expected to find. I didn't know if I even wanted the answers anymore. When I reached the building, it was everything I had imagined. Dimly lit, the kind of place that looked like it was from another life. I felt out of place just standing there. The door was cracked open, and I pushed it in. Inside, it was worse than I could have ever imagined. The space was sparse. Old furniture, a dusty couch, a couple of chairs. But what really stopped me was the people. They weren't the kind of people you'd find at a bar or a cafe. These were strangers. People with too many secrets. I could feel the weight of it all, and there she was, Lauren. She was standing with the man from the photos, the one who had passed her the envelope. She was smiling, laughing, but it wasn't the way she smiled at me. It was different. There was a tension in her expression, something that was both familiar and foreign. And then I heard the words, "I've been waiting for this," she said. "It's almost time." The man nodded, handing her another envelope. "Don't worry. It's all going according to plan." My heart was pounding in my chest. I felt like I was intruding on something I wasn't supposed to see. But I had to know that I stepped forward, just enough to catch their attention. Lauren turned slowly, her face going pale when she saw me. "Mark," she whispered, like she was seeing a ghost. "You didn't think I would find out, did you?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. The man beside her took a step forward. He was tall, dressed in black, and looked more like someone you'd find in a dark alley than in a place like this. His eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and dangerous. That I stood my ground. "What's going on here? What is this?" Lauren didn't answer. She just looked down at the envelope in her hands. I could see her shaking. And then, the truth came crashing down like a tidal wave. She wasn't having an affair. She wasn't meeting someone for a secret romance. This wasn't about me at all. This was about her. About something she had buried deep in her past. Something she was trying to protect me from. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted you to find out. I wanted to leave that life behind, but it's not that easy. They won't let me." I didn't know what she meant. But there was one thing I did know. Whatever this was, it was bigger than I could handle alone. The man stepped between us, his eyes cold. "You need to go," he said, his hand resting on something under his jacket that I wasn't about to argue. I backed away slowly, my mind racing. The next few days were a blur. Lauren wouldn't speak to me. She wouldn't answer my calls. When I confronted her, she just cried, shaking her head. But she didn't deny it. She told me it was something she had been a part of a long time ago, something she had tried to leave behind. But the past never stays buried. It has a way of finding its way back that I don't know what she's involved in. I don't know who those people are. But one thing is clear. Our life, our marriage, has always been built on a lie. And now, the truth is out there. But I don't know if I can ever trust her again. The real question is, will I ever be able to escape the shadows from her past? Or will they haunt me forever?